Think your healthy Friday fish is safe? Think again. We're exposing how Aussie markets became a global dumping ground for chemical-laden trash. That vibrant Tasmanian salmon? It's naturally a sickly gray, faked with synthetic dyes. Your fresh catch? Likely sat in a Chinese freezer for 2 years. From Pacific Dory that's actually sewage-raised basa to seafood extender with 0% crab, you're eating starch, gums, and heavy metals. A single serving of Flake, shark, can hit you with a week's worth of neurotoxic mercury. While foreign giants like JBS and Cook Inc. buy out our icons, they're swapping nutrition for shrinkflation and profit. Stop being a passive pawn for a Brazilian billionaire's bottom line. It's time to strip back the labels, invoke your consumer veto, and stop feeding your family industrial lies. Let me take you through the worst offenders. Let's start with the most blatant imposter in the refrigerated aisle: seafood extender, often sold as crab sticks or seafood highlighter. It's a staple of the Aussie seafood salad, those bright red and white sticks that look like they've been precision engineered in a laboratory. And that's because they have. There is absolutely no crab in a crab stick. None. Instead, what you're eating is surimi. Think of it as the hot dog of the sea. It's a gray pulverized paste made from white fish offcuts, the bits and pieces left over after the profitable fillets are gone, and by catch, that is otherwise unsellable. To turn this fish sludge into something you'd actually put in your mouth, they mix it with massive amounts of sugar, egg whites, vegetable oil, and thickeners like starch and vegetable gums. Some brands in our local Coles and Woolworths actually contain more sugar than protein. Take a moment to look at the texture. It's rubbery, bouncy, and completely uniform. That's not nature, that's chemistry. They use red food dye to paint a skin on the outside to trick your brain into thinking of lobster or crab. You're paying for a highly processed, sugary fish sausage. Have you ever noticed that fishy aftertaste that lingers a bit too long after eating a cheap seafood salad? That's the taste of industrial processing trying to hide the quality of the base ingredients. If you've ever felt like your seafood lunch was more like eating a sponge, share your experience in the comments below. Next time you're in the freezer aisle, pick up a box of I&J or Bird's Eye fish fingers. These are the reliable brands Aussie mums have trusted for decades. But look at the back of the pack. You'll see the fish content is often hovering around 50 to 60%. What's the other 40%? It's a cocktail of wheat flour, vegetable oils, thickeners, and water. You're essentially buying overpriced breadcrumbs and starch glued together with a bit of minced fish. But the real investigation begins with the logistics. Most of this fish is Alaskan pollock or blue grenadier, hoki. It's caught by massive industrial trawlers in the North Pacific or the sub-Antarctic, but it isn't processed there. To save on labor costs, these companies ship the raw fish thousands of miles to China or Thailand. There it is thawed, processed into fingers or fillets, crumbed, refrozen, and then shipped all the way back to Australia. By the time you put that fish finger under the grill, it has traveled more miles across the globe than most people do in a lifetime. This isn't fresh by any definition of the word. It's a globe-trotting commodity that's been frozen and thawed so many times its cellular structure is basically mush. This is why it needs those vegetable gums and starches to give it the structural integrity of real fish. Now let's move to the fresh deli counter. You see the prawns sitting on a bed of ice. They look plump, glossy, and local. But look closer for a tiny, often obscured tag that says, "Thawed for your convenience." This is one of the most cynical marketing phrases in the industry. It means these aren't Australian prawns, they are Vaname prawns, intensively farmed in the high-density ponds of Thailand or Vietnam. Because these ponds are so crowded, they are often breeding grounds for disease, requiring a heavy rotation of antibiotics and chemicals just to keep the prawns alive until harvest. But it gets worse. To make these prawns heavier and thus more profitable, they are often treated with phosphates. These chemicals act like a sponge, forcing the prawn meat to absorb and hold onto water. When you buy these, you're literally paying a premium price for chemical water weight. This is why they feel mushy and watery when you cook them. Rather than having that snap and sweet burst of flavor you get from a wild-caught Australian tiger prawn, you're bypassing our world-class local industry to support an industrial chemical experiment overseas. And this leads us to the curious case of the $15 pub lunch special. You see Pacific Dory or Cream Dory on the menu. It sounds elegant, doesn't it? Something caught in the deep blue waters of the Pacific. It's a lie. In almost every case, that fish is basa. Basa is a type of catfish raised in the Mekong Delta in Vietnam. Now, the Mekong is a majestic river, but it is also one of the most polluted river systems on the planet. It receives a staggering amount of industrial runoff and untreated sewage from the massive populations living along its banks. The fish are raised in floating cages at such high densities that they require a constant stream of antibiotics to prevent them from dying in their own waste. To sell this to Australians, retailers and restaurants use the name dory to create a premium image. But dory is a completely different species of high-quality deep-sea fish. By calling basa cream dory, they are committing a form of identity theft to trick you into eating a bottom-feeding catfish raised in questionable water. And here is where the story takes a darker turn toward your own health. We cannot talk about Australian seafood without talking about the chippy, and if you're at a chippy, you're likely ordering Flake. It's an Australian institution. It's boneless, it's mild, and it's cheap. But Flake is a marketing term for shark meat, specifically gummy shark. Here is the biological reality. Sharks are apex predators. They sit at the very top of the food chain. Because they live a long time and eat smaller fish that have already consumed toxins, sharks bioaccumulate heavy metals. Food Standards Australia. New Zealand FSANZ has issued explicit warnings about mercury levels in shark meat. Mercury is a potent neurotoxin. It doesn't just pass through you, it builds up in your system. A single standard portion of Flake can contain more mercury than your recommended intake for an entire week. Yet walk into any local chippy in Melbourne or Sydney, and you won't see a single warning label. You'll see families and elderly men, groups already at risk for cardiovascular and neurological issues, eating what is essentially a heavy metal sponge soaked in batter. Now we reach the most significant deception of all. This is the part of the story that shifts from individual products to a systemic failure of national identity. When you think of premium Australian seafood, you think of Tasmania, you think of tassel and Huon aquaculture. You see the ads with pristine blue waters and snow-capped mountains. You think you're supporting local farmers and eating the gold standard of omega-3s. But look at the paperwork. In 2021, Huon was bought by JBS. JBS is a Brazilian meat giant, the largest in the world, with a history of massive fines for environmental violations and corporate scandals. In 2022, Tassel was acquired by Cook Inc., a Canadian multinational. Our iconic Tasmanian salmon industry is no longer ours. It is controlled by foreign giants whose primary loyalty is to shareholders in Sao Paulo and New Brunswick, not the ecosystem of the Derwent River. But the betrayal goes deeper than ownership. It's about the fish itself. Wild salmon are pink because they eat krill and shrimp. Farmed salmon in Tasmania live in pens. They don't eat krill. Naturally, their flesh is a dull, unappetizing gray. To fix this, the industry uses a color chart. They literally choose the shade of pink they want from a fan deck, just like you'd choose paint for your living room. They then feed the fish synthetic astaxanthin, a chemical derivative, to dye the flesh pink. Without this chemical intervention, you wouldn't touch that salmon. Furthermore, intensive farming in places like Macquarie Harbour has created dead zones. Because thousands of fish are packed into small areas, their waste and uneaten food drop to the sea floor, stripping the water of oxygen. It's a marine graveyard where nothing else can breathe. This isn't nature, it's a floating feedlot. If you found out the fresh pink color of your salmon was actually the result of a synthetic dye fed to a gray fish in a crowded cage, would you still consider it a health food? I want to know your thoughts on this. Is the industry being transparent enough? We've looked at the gray salmon dyed pink, the shark meat loaded with neurotoxins, and the catfish from polluted rivers dangled in front of us as dory. The common thread here isn't just bad fish. It's a system designed to prioritize global logistics and profit margins over the health and transparency of the Australian consumer. These corporations bank on your busy lifestyle, hoping you won't read the fine print or ask where the $15 catch of the day actually came from. But you have the power to collapse this house of cards. Knowledge is your primary defense. Here are 4 rules to take with you. First, always prioritize wild-caught Australian species. Look for flathead, whiting, or barramundi that explicitly state product of Australia and wild-caught. Our fisheries are among the best managed in the world. Don't let them be replaced by overseas sludge. Second, find a local fishmonger. Break the habit of buying prepackaged supermarket trays. Talk to the person behind the counter. Ask what came in this morning. If it smells like the ocean, it's fresh. If it smells fishy, it's already decomposing. Third, audit your canned fish. Look for pole and line caught. Brands like Safcol are owned by the South Australian fishing industry. Supporting them means your money stays in the pockets of Australian fishers, not foreign conglomerates. Fourth, if it's too cheap to be true, it is. That $10 frozen prawn ring or $15 pub dory is cheap for a reason. You are paying with your health for their efficiency. We live on the world's largest island, surrounded by the cleanest oceans on Earth. There is no reason we should be importing chemical-laden waste from overseas while our own premium industry is sold off to the highest foreign bidder. Read the labels, check the origin. Every dollar you spend is a vote for the type of food system you want for your children. If this investigation opened your eyes, hit the like button and share this with your mates who love a Sunday fish barbie. Subscribe to this channel and ring the notification bell. We have more investigations coming that the big brands don't want you to see. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt sick after a cheap fish meal? Or have you noticed the gray reality behind the pink salmon labels? Let's hold these companies accountable together. I'll see you in the next one. The content in this video is based on my personal experience, taste, and opinions at the time of filming. Food quality may vary depending on batches, timing, or specific locations. This video is for reference purposes only and is not intended to disparage any brand or individual. Viewers are encouraged to try it themselves and form their own opinions.